It wasn't looking good for Dante and the damned dozen, wasn't it? Pummeled to death by a big brother of the middle for stealing hair salon coupons. Ishmael was eventually able to nick his glasses with her mace. He told her to try it again. This made Ishmael even more irritated. She didn't face all those waves just to... As long as she can keep trying, she can. The mist thickened. It expanded, devouring everything, the future, hope, and any slim chance of victory that they had, as did the fog from their sights, of their mind, due to the constant agony that they're enduring to keep this up. They asked themselves if this will continue until Ishmael gave up, or until he grew tired of this game, until he simply walked over and crushed their clock. Could Virgilius piece their shattered clock together? Could they put it back together, even? Is this possible? Not even a shred of them would be. And then Ricardo was starting to grow bored of this, deciding to zoom right past to the main event, calling it clock bashing. Dante was unable to do anything. Ishmael didn't want them to give up, telling them to run, to get out of there. Ricardo understanding how precious Dante was to her, as Ishmael was hanging onto his leg, even after all that beating. Ishmael was doing all that she could to delay Ricardo, while Dante was questioning themselves whether or not to activate the self-destruct charge. Was this really the end? Thankfully, it wouldn't be that day, as another Deus Ex Machina appeared in the form of a distant sound. It was solemn, and it told clearly through the blinding fog. Ricardo wasn't sure what was going on there, but as Dante's vision opened up again, they saw a skiff, one much smaller and more modest than theirs, from beyond the misty veil. The skiff slowly guided towards their position across the water. On it was a solitary figure holding an oar. They looked like a more traditional depiction of Charon, the ferryman of the underworld. With a small blue light around the head, and a giant harpoon was attached to the bow of the ship. Ricardo was asking why. Dante saw that this big brother of the middle, who could break that skiff in half with his bare hands, stared at it in stunned silence. Clearly he knew of the occupants, and it was clear that the occupant was there with purpose, gently rowing in their direction. Something was flashing atop the skiff. The figure hurled something in their, general direction, flying so fast that it couldn't be catched by human eyes. But Dante didn't have time to register that something was thrown, before noticing that something had pierced Ricardo's left shoulder. There was also a powerful shockwave, far mightier than anything that the pirates had fired at them earlier, struck them, making the air quake. It was not a distance that most people would even think about jumping across, but this figure did so from their skiff to the branch facility with grace and agility. Well, we're talking about a world where people like Virgilius can have artificial muscle fiber augmentation to be able to run as if he's a fast blue adrenaline junkie. So leaping like a big green rage monster who goes through more clothes than a wasteful fashionista isn't outside of possibility. Ricardo seemed unassailable until that moment, as he was on his knees and his shoulders skewered. He also seemed to know this individual. The harpoon was what was embedded in him. It was too immense to be thrown by any unaugmented human, especially at the speed that it was thrown. The hooded figure's arm was wreathed in a familiar light. Ricardo referred to him as an old geezer, thinking that he was out there fishing, asking if he thinks that he's hot now that they made him a colour, just because he hunted the marlin whale. Was he challenging the middle to a hunt, like there's some whale? Ah, yes, a colour fixer. That would explain what he did, and as for the marlin whale, it certainly wasn't a small feat killing that, as it was enough to get him above grade 1. Ricardo knew that he wouldn't attack him without knowing the consequences. The hooded figure saw the middle as no different from a whale, but that's not why he's there. He's after a fish that got away. Ricardo laughed at this. Clearly he knew this, as that's his thing. Telling him that there's no need to remind him that the middle never forgets. The hooded figure didn't give a telling him that he's free to write him down in the remaining margins of his nasty little book. He tugged the harpoon lodged in Ricardo's shoulder. It was clearly painful to him, even with his tattoo augmentations. He tried to hold his ground against the harpoon's pull, until there was a crunch. The hooded figure told him that those that don't bend, break. The harpoon tore off his entire shoulder, along with the left arm connected to it. Yeah, he'll need a new arm, assuming that he gets back to a place where the middle operates alive. Most people would be turned to tattered meat by that force, which shows how effective those tattoos are, saying, well, that Ricardo said it was nothing. It wasn't bad. Asking him if he'd like to give it another try. By this hooded figure, Ricardo considered this unwise, as all of his backup was dead and he was missing an arm. He knew best than to fight a battle that he knew that he couldn't win. So he decided to leave for now, telling him that he shouldn't forget. The middle remembers. It matters not what he did there. The middle will remember everyone and everything that dared to turn their back on it. And the middle always pays its debts, in whatever form. Yeah. Why don't you read some more stuff made by George R.R. Martin? Ishmael was silent at this. Forced to be, much as Dante was, as this old man approached them. Clearly, if he wanted to kill them with his harpoon, they'd have no choice but to just take it, as they wouldn't be able to evade it. Thankfully, this wasn't his intent. He was looking for a fish that consumed that structure, asking if they're also there to fish. So it's clear that they have similar business. They all want to hunt down the pallid whale, not exactly for the same reasons. But it's good to have a colour fixer on their side whose hands are not tied by a clause in the employment contracts that prevents him from directly intervening. unless he has no other choice. Such as when the damned does no down and Dante can't restore them safely. Thankfully, this colour fixer is not on Limbus Company's payroll. Now, let's talk about the middle, and how they fit in around the fingers. The fingers well, at least so far, have quite different mentalities. The thumb are the bureaucrats, strictly adhering to etiquette and protocol. The index are the zealots, blindly following the prescripts, no matter how cruel and incomprehensible. The ring follows their passions, even if it drives them psychotic. Well, it's an occupational hazard for artists, isn't it? While the middle are the accountants. They're also all about brotherhood/sisterhood and make sure that others clear their debts, as it is written in the Book of Vengeance, where with each act of vengeance a new tattoo is put on their bodies, and there are a wide variety of things that can be punished. Also, it seems more like the Book of Vindictive Pronouncements, as it delivers disproportionate retribution to those that slight them, even by little. Here is a made-up example of what they do. Say that someone violated Title 2, Section 1, Row P, Line 6, which is for farting too close to one of the middle. The punishment for that sin would be get a large pointed object and shove up the of the one that committed the deed. Or Title 6, Section 6, Row M, Line 6, which is making a brother/sister soil themselves, where the punishment for that would be to force whoever did that to endure the worst torture of all time, the one thing that just won't die. And that is listening to Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley over and over again at random moments for a month. Yeah, I can see the Rickroll persisting centuries, as it's clear that this game is set in the distant future. It's why I see them as having an accountant mentality, as they want to balance the books that contain the debts that aren't financial. Ooh, sounds worse than my sister. She's an accountant and she's not that bad, not even close. It'd be far too obvious if the middle was referred to as the Special Snowflake Syndicate. That, and it wouldn't sound as intimidating, although in this case, it applies, as they certainly overreact to even slight amounts of criticism. Let's hope that the one in charge of the middle doesn't have an orange face. Actually, no, I doubt that Project Moon would be able to get away with that kind of parody. Anyway, Tanya, the Heure de Loup, was pretty high up in the ranks of the middle, at least before Roland, the Black Stain, attacked them in the south of the city, over 1 year and 7 months prior, killing half of their number. He's also one of the few that's actually gotten away with it. Besides, the head have sent him, the library and everyone in it to the outskirts, and the head have made it clear that they'd kill him if he ever returned from the outskirts, seeing him as an accessory for attempting to shield Angela, an illegal AI, so as far as threats to his life are concerned, a mere finger is the least of his worries. I doubt that even the middle would want to provoke the triumvirate of evil that silently supports the social Darwinist mentality that seems to be typical within the city. There's also the fact that they've likely replenished their numbers by now. I mean, 19 months would mean a lot of recruiting, either from the subsidiaries or from the people desperate for a living, not to mention security. Now, that's not considering the true cost of such actions. They are also unbelievably petty-minded, as Ricardo wanted to kill Heathcliff and those that was with him as accessories to the sin of him stealing hair salon coupons. I mean, seriously, hair salon coupons. He wanted them dead because he couldn't get his hair done? I hate to think what he'd do to someone that took his deluxe pass to the spa, probably giving them a slow and painful death in the style of that scene from Reservoir Dogs. I mean, it wouldn't just be physical pain. Just search Mr. Blonde Dance and you'll get what I mean. There are implications that they're Russian mafia themed, partly due to their tattoos as being seen as their service record. As in, the more acts of vengeance completed, the more tattoos are added. The middle don't tolerate desertion, as Queequeg is being searched for. As for the ranks, a little brother/sister is the equivalent of a thumb soldato or ring clerk. A big brother/sister is the equivalent of a thumb capo or ring docent. A great brother/sister is the equivalent of a thumb sottocapo or ring maestro. I suspect that it's only a matter of time before we find out what the pinky are like. Based on the image involving Ryushu on the website, and also in the fine details of her EGO summoning image, they're likely masochistic, or at least those that see life without pain as having no meaning. Now, there is a possibility that the Blade lineage are a subsidiary of the Pinky. Well, they're certainly not Thumb affiliates, as in the Mirror identities. They were fighting the Kurokumo clan, who are Thumb affiliates. As for this encounter, it could be used to gauge the power of the Damned Dozen. Now, if the middle are at Star of the City level threats, like the rest of the Fingers, this would make the Damned Dozen an urban nightmare at most. As if they're able to defeat Ricardo, they'd be strong enough to take on the Star of the City. Sadly, they're not strong enough. At least not yet. After Dante eventually restored the Damned Dozen, and they all arrived back on Mephistopheles, along with their saviour, Virgilius was brought up to speed by Faust, who saw this as unexpected, to bring a big shot to their humble abode. Heathcliff was annoyed by this attitude, asking if he had any idea how many times that prick Ricardo killed them. The least he could do was... That reminded Virgilius that he'd have to reopen his personal consultation hours for a certain kleptomaniac among them. Yeah. The repeated beatdowns and killings was all Heathcliff's fault. If he didn't decide to rob that club, the middle wouldn't be an issue for them. That shut Heathcliff up. Clearly Virgilius didn't like involving this outsider into this, silently implying that if Heathcliff shut up about that mess that he caused, As far as he was concerned, that'd be the end of it. However, involving this outsider didn't seem to bother Faust, as she considered him indispensable to the completion of that mission. Virgilius asked her what that was. He answered that it was because he was the only one that could hunt the pallid whale. This didn't surprise him, referring to the old man as the Indigo Elder. Then the fixer fangirl Don Quixote registered this, nervous about sharing that space with two color fixers. Virgilius didn't answer this and kept talking to him, mentioning that he was wandering the Great Lake to hunt its whales. As for what made him a color fixer, it was because he killed the marlin whale, one of the 5 calamities. The reason why there are only 4 now. The Indigo Elder grunted, which wasn't a confirmation or a denial. It was just how he was, and everyone understood that. Faust pointed out that all the evidence suggests that the golden bowl was devoured by the pallid whale, which was stranded at the Great Lake, the same whale that's normally observed in the outskirts. Virgilius wasn't surprised, as that's how things tended to go. The Indigo Elder didn't want to waste any more time than he already had. He wished to hunt the pallid whale. Virgilius agreed. Time was all they had. Faust also knew where the whale was headed. She's also certain that the Indigo Elder spent a significant amount of time observing and learning that whale's behaviors in order to hunt it. He silently confirmed this. Ishmael had a plan, and she'd do anything to make it work, even if he wanted her there only as bait. She told them how they'd do it. She gave a lengthy explanation of her plan. Heathcliff saw Ishmael as more nutty than Don Quixote, believing that Ricardo had thrashed her enough to do some significant damage to her psyche. She made it clear that she's going there for her mission. The Golden Bar just happens to be in the same direction. She'll leave it up to them, or rather, up to Dante, as their decision matters most. Both she and Limbus Company are trying to find a way to reach their goals. That's all that is. The Indigo Elder observed this, and she asked if anyone had a better idea. Heathcliff couldn't agree to this, seeing it as a mistake to even entertain that balmy idea. Well, if anyone else had a better idea, they'd go for that one instead. Then the Indigo Elder asked one thing, asking if Virgilius, the Red Gaze, would join them for fishing. Virgilius told him that he neither had the experience nor the skill to hunt marine life, but he had other more important concerns that prevented him from joining. Yeah, his contract prevents him from directly intervening unless he has no other choice, and he's heavily motivated to remain within the terms of that contract for strong personal reasons. So he won't take part unless the worst comes to pass. Then the Indigo Elder rose from his seat and walks off, as if he's about to leave. Otis told him to wait, nervously, telling him that they don't need their guide. With a proper plan, they're more than capable of completing that mission. To give up so easily. The Indigo Elder never said anything about giving up. Mephistopheles was too loud to hunt for the pallid whale. Dante didn't think that Mephistopheles was that loud. The Indigo Elder told them that to hunt it, the boats narrow and covert. Yes. It needs to be near, narrow, and sturdy. That's what's needed to hunt whales. Gregor was confused. All he needed to hear was that Virgilius was out, asking why that was. Roger noting that it would go smoother if Virgilius was with them. Faust told him that a boat can be prepared that fitted his specifications, should he request it. He told her that wouldn't be necessary. He'll use his own skiff. Heathcliff didn't think much of his old dinghy. Yeah, not thinking much of something that the pallid whale would be able to split in half with a light wag of its tail. Otis knew better. Looks were deceiving. It was extremely durable, and according to Yi Sang, it used alloys from X-Core in its construction. Very hard to come by. Although a colour fixer like him likely had the influence and the money to be able to get that. Yes, it seems that this hints that, well, X-Corp's singularity has something to do with the creation of alloys. This excited Don Quixote, who saw this as another benefit of having a colour fixer with them. She's heard a tale of... The Indigo Elder then decided to approach Dante, much to their confusion. He noticed that in the fight against Ricardo of the Middle, that their clock was there, and the damned dozen's lifeline. He assumed that it was a singularity of sorts. He didn't think that it would work against the whale. He told them to get used to the idea that not everything can be brought back. Dante asked why. Why did he accept even when Virgilius opted out? Faust translated this for them. The Indigo Elder told them that was the wrong question. He would have denied their request had Virgilius agreed to take part. If he joined them, they would battle the whale in a long and arduous struggle. In the end, the whale would surely go down, taking one of them with it. That's why he would have been out, if Virgilius joined them. Dante didn't understand, so he told them that it would mean that the hunt would no longer be his. Don Quixote, the resident lunatic, struggled to comprehend his intentions. The Indigo Elder answered by saying that it wouldn't be a test of his limits. Ishmael wanted to know what he was talking about. Apparently, to hunt the whale, they need to prepare with everything that they had, and he told her that, out of fear, humans drew borders even to the outskirts that lie beyond the city's limits. Beyond it are stars that lie beyond the edge of reasoning and understanding. Beyond even the concept of fear itself. He is a fisherman seeking to cross the borders and challenge their, well, that very understanding. Otis asked if he's talking about what lies beyond the outskirts, its outreaches. This annoyed Ishmael. That whale devours everything. It brings nothing but calamity. How could he? He understood that she was prey once and that she was a sailor. Countless lakes there also devour, summon calamities, telling her that if she finds herself at a crossroads, if she finds that her life is worth nothing in the face of what lies before her, to recall that conversation. Ishmael decided to keep whatever thoughts were in her head to herself, seemingly unconcerned. he admitted that he never was any good with advice, although he'd part with a few words as a fellow seafarer, feeling a bit of kinship. They followed his instructions, riding on a skiff prepared on Mephistopheles. Moments before boarding it, Dante saw Ishmael. It was her plan, and they had no way of knowing what she was thinking, only an inkling and vague guesses, all of which led to disasters. So they asked her themselves, what does she really want? Ishmael said what she really wants. Then Dante received a nightmarish vision of her, one that she hid well from Virgilius and the rest of the damned dozen. She was truly deranged, her true nature, lifting a body from the waters, shattered bones, strips of muscle tissue, flesh, holding up pieces of bodies. Specifically pieces of bloody flesh, as her former captain was killed before her. Then we snapped back to reality, where she told them that they need to get going. Dante will need to stop her from going too far, as she's barely holding it together there. Certainly after his, that psychometry ability showed him, rather than that. Yes, it can be hard to slip with the pronouns. As for the Indigo Elder, he's a reference to The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway, where it involved an elderly fisherman who was certainly determined to be successful at fishing after a long dry spell, where he caught attempted to catch a marlin. He even had to make do with a crude spear by putting a knife on an oar. In the source material, the fisherman was less than successful. The Indigo Elder, on the other hand, was much more successful, and the marlin whale was an eldritch horror. As they discussed earlier, they took a different route from the Indigo Elder. They'd first arrive at separate destinations for their plan. Dante observed something floating there, not long after they crossed the line where the lake water turned dark grey. They noticed something pale peeking out from the lake. Sinclair was asking if they were islands. There was a lot of them. Otis theorized that they might be reefs, seeing it as possibly the lake's challenge, to navigate it while avoiding them to the best of their abilities. Sinclair saw them as looking rocky. He saw them as too big to be called reefs. Yisang asked Dante if they saw anything. They may attempt to discover a path that avoids that area of obstacles, yet would require them to go down an unknown path that could lead them to the plan's ruin. Dante had to think about this. Faust told Dante if they can sense even the most general direction of the Golden Bar, to please relay it to her. She could use that to approximate its location. She has a degree of accuracy due to her having additional data from the Indigo Elder. Heathcliff complained that he could have been their magic compass to begin with. Faust told him that it's possible in the Great Lake because it has very few in the way of obstacles. I mean, it's mostly water with some ships and port ships. Nothing to throw them off to any significant amount. The urban areas of the city, on the other hand, has a dense amount of structures, both above and below ground. There's also the problem of a higher population density. In such conditions, the golden bar could only be detected in close proximity, due to too much in the way. Heathcliff remarks that he's not much use regarding that anywhere else. It's confirmed that there's habitation underground. Could that mean that District 26 is largely below ground? It's certainly not in the surface map. Dante understood that this was why they could feel the golden bar there, even when it was so far away. They pointed in the general direction of the vague feeling where the golden bar was located. Faust confirmed this, and they'll point the ship in that direction. Ishmael steered the ship in that direction without a word. As they grew nearer to an island or a reef, a heavy silence descended upon them. Then Ishmael gasped in sudden realization. Yes, a sudden realization that she saw it as that lake. She had an incomprehensible look on her face. It was hard for Dante to tell if it was unrestrained joy or the joy of finding something that she's been searching for so long. An overwhelming, all-consuming happiness that her facial muscles began to twitch on their own. It might even be extreme fear. The fear in the face of destined, unavoidable horror. The lake's splashing waves hit her trembling face and rolled down her cheeks. She might even be sweating from dread. Faust asked Ishmael if she had any new information to share with them. Ishmael knew what to expect from there, exactly what to do, telling Otis to tell her precisely what she sees, numbers, sizes, all of it, as she can't see what's in front of her from the back. Otis understood this to mean try and avoid the wild currents and find a safe path around those rocks. She rose from her seat to gaze at the path ahead, balancing herself as the ship rocked. She told Ishmael that there's a minuscule one that's plain patterned, glistening rock, 350 meters ahead, and 500 meters ahead of that was a medium-sized rock with a bump on top that stood out. Ishmael told her to continue. Otis told her that not so far ahead from there was a large island with a rough, porous surface. Upon closer inspection, it's like an archipelago of 4 similar islands. Ishmael saw this as good. She fiddled with the steering gear and the engine's output levers. Clearly, she knew more than she was saying. Otis announced that they cleared the first rock. Honglu was concerned that its texture was a bit different from that of a normal rock. Ryushu said, GE, or good eye. It's not the texture of the rock or even soil. I mean, Heathcliff, ever the one that's denser than lead weighted down by G-Corp gravity spheres, didn't see what was weird about the texture. He couldn't see over the big boy and the long one. Like the Missile and I'm not sure who else he was referring to. Perhaps Rodia? Well, whoever that was, Ryuzu saw a living, breathing thing. Heathcliff was confused. Then Otis told Ishmael to watch where she was steering that ship. They're going to crash into that third rock at this rate. That was her intention. That's where they get off. Heathcliff was asking if she meant that creepy porous rock over there, telling her to do it on her own time, but not to take them with her. As there's not a tree, never mind a person there, why are they anchoring there for? Ishmael told him that he has to screw his head on a different position in the Great Lake. Heathcliff was asking what she was talking about. He was interrupted by a loud shock and an ear-splitting sound, scratching and sliding against something. That was the boat, rubbing against that island. That rock. He then asked if she knows what she's doing. Ryushu understood that Ishmael knew exactly what she was doing, and Sinclair recognized the color, asking Ishmael what color it was. And Ishmael confirmed that they weren't islands or rocks. And then they suddenly rumbled, vibrated, as ground tremors from an earthquake. They were all part of a whale, which awoke from its slumber. They fought some pallid mermaids on that whale. It might sound as crazy as Don Quixote's usual ramblings, but, well, we'll find out where it's leading. Until next time, hail the rabbit!